So, good morning.
Morning.
In order to understand the present Parshiot, where there's intertwined with the details of building a sanctuary, together also with the mitzvah of Shabbos, I want to go back to the earliest work which exists in Jewish tradition, the base of which is attributed to Avraham Avinu. It's called the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Creation. And it's very unusual work. Not saying that the editions which are available today is exactly the same as what was written by Avraham Avinu. Nevertheless, the principles mentioned there, with a deep analysis of the Hebrew language, including also the grammar of the Hebrew language, combined with what people today would call Kabbalistic traditions, but maybe very deep, even scientific traditions. And there was a suggestion made, just to go back in history a bit. I suppose all of you have heard of Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, his commentaries and his essays have been a few times translated also into English. They're very brilliant. One of his main teachers was a person called Chacham Bernai. He was the rabbi of Hamburg. Didn't want to call himself a rabbi because of the Reform movement, so he preferred to choose the title Chacham. And he was the most brilliant thinker. And he was one of the teachers of Rabbi Hirsch. And also he knew a great deal about Sanskrit. And he even traces certain concepts. Not everybody agrees to this. Many say he's the author of a certain work, whereby he says that in Sanskrit we find some of the traditions of Avraham Avinu, and how they were spread in the Far Eastern religions and philosophies in ancient times. One of the principles of the Sefer Yetzirah is that existence is divided into three categories, which in Hebrew termed Olam, Shana, Nefesh. Olam is the world of space. Shana, the year, is the world of time. Both these we know are concepts which in our abstract thinking, time can exist for eternity and space can exist to infinity. Nevertheless, we're all limited by time and space. The physical world is explained in terms of time and space. The third dimension of existence is called Nefesh, which means the spiritual. So, I'd like to connect this with the use of a certain word which we find frequently repeated in these three dimensions. In the current Parshiot, we have a frequent mention of the word melacha with regard to the work of the sanctuary. It's called melacha. We also know the Shabbat, I'm sure you're all familiar with the very important passage of Shabbat, which we also recite on the Shabbat, some of them, Vaychulu v'shamay v'aretz. There we find, repeated a few times, Kivo Shabbat mikol melachto. The Vayvoyev in Yom HaShvi, Kivo. So we say, Hashem, we say He rested on the Shabbat day from all His malacha. So we find creation of the world described with the word malacha. Malacha is creative, the creative work of Hashem in producing a world of space. And here, since this is Shabbat, it's connected with the Shabbat, where we have to be aware of the fact that Hashem is the master of malacha. And that comes at the conclusion of the passage of the creation of the physical universe. It's called the malacha. That's the world of space. Then we find that this term malacha is not just space, but even in that first passage, it's a word which is repeated with the essence of Shabbat is to remember that Hashem does malacha. Also, the prohibitions of work on Shabbat are all termed malacha. We similarly find also the construction of the sanctuary is termed malacha many times. Salel said Hashem gave him wisdom, understanding. B'chol melechet machshevet in all melachot. So here we have an interesting phenomenon. Also, in the Ten Commandments, also says, Lo taseh kol malacha. You should do no malacha on the Shabbat. But also, no malacha is not the only word used for work. We have in the Hebrew of the Tanakh the word amal, which means toiling. And in fact, the prohibition of the Bible of work on Shabbat is not toiling. Perhaps not so today, but when I was a rabbi, and even when I also went abroad on behalf of the yeshiva, generally speaking, the day at which I had to toil most was the Shabbat. From beginning to end of Shabbat, I still remember I had to in different communities where the Shabbat was important to talk. I sometimes had to go from place to place, non-stop, to speak in 6 different places on one Shabbat. I had to walk fast between all of them. So it was a heavy day. And of course, even the truth is, in my synagogue work, my major day of work was on Shabbat, toiling, without transgressing any malacha. Because malacha is creative in the physical sense, to create a change in the physical world. That's malacha. And that's how it's described in the Aseret HaDibrot, 10 Commandments. And that's how it's described also in Al Pasha. So now we have an interesting aspect of this melacha. Melacha means creative work, changing things in nature around us, whilst amal, or even avodah is often used for service, means to be subject to a higher authority in whatever we do, which all includes it. We find Eved in the sense even of a slave. You go to a slave and do everything his master says. We also find Eved Hashem, and those who subjects whatever his interests are to the master of the universe, Eved Hashem. And one of the principles of the Chumash is, I want Am Yisrael to be my avadim. I took you out Me'eretz Yisrael, Beit Avadim, where we made into slaves to a human dictator, or to many dictators, but I want you to listen to my dictations and thereby reach freedom. Because after Hashem is the highest freedom, because you're able thereby to increase your nefesh, as we'll soon see. So I say that the three areas where we find malacha are olam, shana, and nefesh. In other words, the Beit HaMikdash and its predecessor, the Mishkan, this was a way of using the material universe to express that we should become creative in changing the world around us, the world of matter, the world of space, using it all in order to glorify Hashem. And that's the significance of Melechet HaMishkan. On the Shabbat, however, which is the Mikdash in time, in the world of Shana, in other words, the Mikdash in space is a place of worship, whether it's the Mishkan in the desert, or whether it's Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, or whether it's any Beit HaKnesset or Beit Midrash. It's a place of the Shekhinah. So therefore it's a place where we should do malacha in the service of Hashem. That's in the world of time. That's the world of space. In the world of time, we have the same words used in the Chumash also. Shabbos is called it's called also a moed. It's a meeting time, just like the Ohel Moed is a meeting place. And it's a moed called the Mikra Kodesh. The Shabbat is a mikdash in time. So how do we build the mikdash in time? By recognizing the creative power which the human being has is given to us by Hashem. And we shouldn't think that I am the creator, that I can create. Even if I do things that are creative, I've got to feel that creative power is given to me by a higher power. And where is it in Shana? The Torah. Where is it in the Nefesh? The Nefesh, which is the soul of the human being, is expressed in the whole Torah. So therefore, the sages say, Melacha, the word, the source Melacha, is mentioned in the Chumash 39 times. We find Melacha with regard to Shabbat, there are 39 Avot Melachot which are forbidden. And in the Mishkan, in order to construct it, there were 39 types of creative activity. So this we find therefore the word Malach. And if you analyze the word Malach, Melacha is the extension of Malach. What is a Malach? Malachim are used throughout the Tanakh in the sense of human messengers. It's also used in the sense of divine messengers. We could say that there's Malachav Ish, the verse that say, the power of fire is a Malach, is a messenger of Hashem. And even the way in which, tefillot, based upon the words of the prophets, we speak about Ofanim, the Chayit HaKodesh, the Srafim. So we have Ofanim, which are circular powers, which are purposefully designed bodies of the universe, which work in various cycles, and even they turn in different ways, which can be worked out to be express definite designing. So this is the Ofanim, the Chayat HaKodesh are the life powers. Srafim are the powers of fire. So we have different Malachim of Hashem. Then the Malachim are even described in the visions of the prophets constantly, which refer to spiritual powers. So in the Tanakh, we have Malachim used in that sense. The word Melacha, we find also this common factor We find it in Olam, Shana, and Nefesh, in these three dimensions of human existence. Because the soul of the human being can be developed through immersing oneself in the Torah. The question is, why 39? And this is discussed also in the Gemara. The Gemara speaks about it. Where do we learn the 39 Melachot? First of all, it shows the common factor. It's like we find so many mitzvot in the Tanakh, and also even the structure of so many passages in the Tanakh, they follow a numerical system. I think we have to distinguish between this and making simple numerical calculations of the alphabet. It's also significant, but it's referred to in the Pirkei Avot, that means in the tradition, which is recorded in the Ethics of the Fathers as Paparaot L'Chochma. These are just, as it were, candies, desserts, Paparot, in a meal. Not the real meal, it's making it a bit tasty. So then we have all sorts of Gimatraot, which you find also in the Midrashim, and mnemonics, ways to remember things. Because anyone who learns Torah also needs to develop a certain mathematical faculty, even to make measurements, measurements of time, measurements of volumes and so on. Because the part of learning Torah is to develop one's mind also with the logical and mathematical faculty. So, the root of melacha is to send a message. That means, there's such a thing as a person doing work on Shabbat, and he's not even aware of it. He does a melacha, but not aware of it. So there's no prohibition really. You can't help it. It's just, you do it. If a person, we know even by putting on a switch, in order to transform darkness to light, or coldness to heat, you do it intentionally, the switch, that's a malacha, it's creative. What happens over here, if you're in a house and you just want to lean on the wall, and when you're leaning on the wall, you go and switch on the lights. It's called mitasek. You don't have to bring any type of atonement. You didn't even know what you were doing. The result was the same, but there wasn't the intention. In other words, the la'ach means to intend something. So when Hashem created the world, everything was with a purpose. And therefore, really, the word melacha is of great significance when it's used in regard to creation. About 150 years ago, many, at least popularizers of science, they said, there's so many things that have no real purpose, that exist in the world, that exist in the human body. We used to speak always about it, so many organs in the human body that have no use. And even they had a list of over 100 such organs. But as science progressed, they find no such thing. Today, no scientist will say the human body has any organ that doesn't have a definite purpose. Because with the progress of science, we find that is so. And the deeper scientists say the same thing about the whole world. Whatever we know, we see more and more purposeful design, even according to certain really logical and mathematical equations. That's what every generation brings a new insights into the design of the universe. So therefore, even today, one of the most popular theories concerning this globe is that this globe was designed so that human beings could live on it. It's called the anthropocentric understanding of what goes on in this globe. Because it worked out, it would be a little bit further from the sun, it would freeze. A bit near to the sun, it would all become destroyed through the heat. And there's so many other things that demonstrate that there's purpose for us. In fact, there was one of the greatest biologists, this goes back to already many, many decades, called Pierre Dunoy. He was an expert in two areas, one of the biggest experts. He wrote a book called Human Destiny. So he was a master of the laws of chance and a master of biological evolution. And he said, there's no way you can explain the evolution or any form of manner of what has happened to develop different beings according to the laws of chance. So in other words, this purposefulness should demonstrate there's a purposefulness in everything. And he just said, okay, he was a strong evolutionist. At the same time, he was a strong supporter of scientific understanding of a universe which is designed for a purpose. So I think this is very significant. And now let's try to understand why 39. So the key for this is given, one of the keys, for an unusual law in the Torah. That means really we can say in the world of nefesh, of human beings, with regard to an average prohibition in the Chumash of the Torah, for which there is a punishment of 39 lashes. That's how it's described in the oral tradition. Now first let's understand punishments in the Chumash are intended primarily as a deterrent, but in practice are surrounded by many limitations. A person can only give him a physical punishment if there are two witnesses that are cross-examined and can be proven there's no form of bias of any sort, and both the judges and the witnesses don't want any bias, mentioned frequently in the Chumash and the rest of the Torah tradition. In contrast, I would say, to courts of today, which are frequently based upon bias. Both bias of the judges. Judges have not really been trained particularly. They might be a very great expert in knowledge of Roman law, Ottoman law, and common law, but they're not really trained in the art of objective judgment, which can only come through a lot of self-discipline, because a person always feels a bias, as indicated even in the Chumash so frequently. Somebody will have bias for the poor, somebody will have bias for the rich, some have bias against the poor. They say, why do the poor work? And they have a bias against the rich. Why do you go and exploit other people? And that inner bias often has an effect. I'm not even talking about different philosophies of life and so on, but it's very, very difficult for a judge to look at things objectively unless he personally is a person of very high self-discipline, is able to say, I'm taking my person away from this, I've got to judge it according to the objective situation. And also witnesses. There's so many courts where they even make state witnesses. And the state, let's just give an example, it's widely accepted, even accepted here in Israel from the non-rabbinic courts, which is unbelievable. Because a state witness, it's obviously what's a state witness? Person, there's certain crime, there's circumstantial evidence, all sorts. Maybe there's even true evidence. But in order to be sure, so the state in charge of the court, they say, okay, we'll take one of these witnesses involved, and he's not as serious as the others, so let him give evidence against the others. And then we will make his sentence, either remove it or make it a lighter sentence. And that's happened in Israel a few times. It's unbelievable. So therefore, the Torah, however, says you can only give a person malkot if he's been warned beforehand by two objective witnesses without a bias, and who've said to him, if you're going to do this prohibition, we will testify in court against you, so you get the punishment. He said, nevertheless, I want to do it. If not, you can't really punish him. And really the purpose of the punishments, when they do take place, is not that the Torah believes that hurting people physically takes away the power of the sinfulness. But it's a deterrent. And therefore it's mentioned in the Chumash, a lot of punishments for different things. And you find this not just with regard to punishments through the courts, but even more so the punishment of Hashem. When Hashem describes all the punishments that terrible come from the people of Israel, it's not that he wants to bring the punishment, he wants to warn us to keep away from it. Maybe the fact that it's mentioned, we believe it's the truth, it'll help us to keep away from the path of curse and follow the path of blessing. So, there it says in the Chumash, it doesn't say 39 malkot, 39 lashes. It says 40 lashes. Abim yakenu lo yosif. It says you're not allowed to add to it. And it says your brother should be put to shame in front of you. So we say even if put to shame before it's reached 39, or also if you can't, they have to judge first, can he really take such a punishment without it killing him? So if they say there's a danger to hitting him further to his life, then you're not allowed to continue. Or if he's put to shame, you don't continue. In other words, the 39 is to bring you to the 40. And 40 is, throughout the Bible, a symbol of birth. Even in development of the embryo, until today also, a gynecologist, and this is in Jewish tradition also, we say the embryo takes on a formation after 40 days. So 40 is considered a birth, a marriage. So you have it also in the Chumash that when the brave new world after the deluge was to remove the old world, which was filled with violence and corruption, so the rain rained for 40 days. It's emphasized, for 40 days. The 40 days brought purification. Then we find the most significant situation, 40 days during which Moshe Rabbeinu was able to receive the Torah and bring down the first tablets of stone to regain, as it were, rebirth for Am Yisrael after the sin of the golden calf, 40 days of prayer, and then to go and come down with the second tablets of stone, representing the restoration of the covenant with Hashem and the people of Israel, also rebirth, another 40 days. It also explains why the 39 types of work which are forbidden on the Shabbat, in tradition, in the Mishnah it says 40 minus 1. And that's to explain the expression which is mentioned, the B'nai Yisrael should keep the Shabbat, la'asot at the Shabbat, they're going to make the Shabbat, to create a new atmosphere. To create an atmosphere of renewal. This every Shabbat, when Lashon Teshuvah, is to have a weekly renewal of the people of Israel. So here we have the common factor which goes all the way through, that it also says, some say, Ben Abim Lebina, want to get deep understanding of the Torah. So we have, in these three dimensions, you want a renewal. You have to feel a constant rebirth. The constant rebirth exists in the world of space through, even if there's no Beit HaMikdash anymore, then Shachanti B'tocham, you try to make a Beit Mikdash, a certain place where you can feel the nearness of Hashem in the Beit HaMidrash. And the Beit HaMidrash should give you renewal. Or let's say today also we've got something even higher when it comes to prayer, a place of prayer called a Beit HaKnesset, and we've got the Kotel. So the Kotel can bring you constant renewal. That's Mikdash in place, Hashrat HaShechina. Hashrat HaShechina comes when you feel the spirit of renewal. And therefore, David HaMelech said, one thing I asked from Hashem. So he said like this, Shivti v'beit Hashem, I want to be in the house of Him all my life. Then he said, Lavaka b'hichalo, I want to visit in His temple. So I've said this, I say to myself quite often, and it helps very much. It follows. I mean, the first time I went to the Kotel, like so many other people, it was a great experience. And you felt it. It feels different. And in fact, even shortly after I went to the Kotel, or been quite a few times, I remember once I went down with some, I tried to talk to people when they go down to the Kotel, so I spoke to some people on my side. I said, where are you from? He said, I'm really from Hashomet kibbutz, non-religious kibbutz. I said, well, what do you feel when you come here? So he says, really, I was raised up never to mention God's name. But when I come to the Kotel, I feel God exists. Like I heard this, by the way, from Nachman Shai, as a member of Knesset today, when he was given a prize after the Lebanese war, where he was the national pacifier. So he said like this, I was raised in a place where God was never mentioned, never heard of Him. But I'm saying this not before Purim, because he said like this, he was the pacifier, knew where the Scots were going to explode. He warned people, constantly be on the radio, and do we have to go in the sealed rooms? When can we get out of the sealed rooms? He said when he came to Purim, going back a few years, on which day all of a sudden the war was finished, he saw this like a miracle. Almost like a miracle. And he said he saw so many miracles because he knew how the Scots, they were not able to kill any person directly. It was amazing. One Scot came to some American army center and killed a lot of people, but it didn't happen against Israel. Although there were so many. In fact, there were 39 Scots aimed at Israel, 39 attacks, but it didn't destroy human lives. So he saw this is the hand of God, and from then on he believed in God. So, in other words, the purpose of the work on Shabbat, which is forbidden, is referred to as 40, Abim Chazara, because Shabbat is not negative. The purpose of Shabbat, lasot, to feel the Shabbat. And I'll just end this talk with some years ago, one of the greatest thinkers in America was called Harvard Cox, and he wrote a lot of books, including one on looking east, where he tries to compare and contrast Eastern attitudes to life and Western attitudes to life. And there he brings a chapter on the Sabbath, which comes because of his own personal experience. He had a friend who was a rabbi, and he stated once from a Shabbos from beginning to end. He said the Eastern religions, they concentrate upon being, feeling the oneness of the universe. In meditation, it's all a part of being. And they think the highest level is when you really feel the oneness of the universe. And the Western attitude is to put emphasis on action. Be active, be pragmatic, be practical. So that's how he describes different philosophies and religions and our outlooks. One believes in activity, the other one believes in a status of spiritual awareness. So he said the Shabbat is the right balance between the two. 6 days you do work, Hashem wants us to be productive, He wants us to use our power of creativity, develop it as much as possible, but at the same time recognize that it all comes from Hashem. And therefore the Shabbat teaches us the balance between doing and being. I think this is a very true concept, and it goes together with the concept we observe the Shabbat by giving up our human creativity and because human creativity is one of the greatest dangers today. People are immersed in creativity, and therefore the attitude of people who are very productive and creative is, let me develop it to the utmost extent. So people who are working in business, they work 24 hours times 7. They want to reach the top of the Forbes list. They become greedy and corrupt. People who are interested in having political power, they want more and more political power, and they become dictators. And therefore, also even the time we produce better and better modes of producing energy, and then it becomes corrupt and used for destruction. No, you must make sure that your creative power is controlled by recognizing it's given by Hashem for moral purposes, for life and not for death, for construction, also for moral construction and not for moral corruption. So this is the essence of, we can say, introducing into Olam Shana Nefesh the power of dedicating our creativity to Hashem and what Hashem has in mind to bring peace and great happiness and great productivity to the human race. So, if you've got any questions,